Okay, technique for today. I thought we'd do another technique because it's always good to have another option in our toolbox. So this one is called, if I remember, I think it's we'll call it the cinema technique. This cinema technique. Let's run with that. Nice. Man, I hate when I forget things on camera, but we're not doing any editing. I'm not going back and figuring out the name. We're just going to run with the cinema technique. So this one is about finding a way to deal with events in a manner that kind of eases the burden on yourself, but also gives you a better understanding of other people and their reactions to things. And it sounds simple at first, but because it requires conscious effort, it's actually hard. Like, the doing of it isn't hard, it's just the actually mustering up the energy and, feeling necessary, like needed, feeling like it's a necessity to actually do it is hard. And, not, I don't always do it, but, I admit that, but it's something, I do recommend and I do try to do as much as possible. So the way it works is when there's something in your life, maybe you have a fight with your partner, or you're having issues at work, or, whatever the issue may be. Like, as you can imagine, most issues you're going to have are in relation to other people. So this technique can apply to a lot of those situations. So the first instance is you imagine yourself like sitting in a cinema, like a movie theater or whatever, and up on the big screen or whatever is the event that was happening. Like, it's either you fighting with your partner or your family or whatever. So let's just go around with that because that's probably the easiest one to relate to. You get to watch it from that perspective where you're in the cinema watching yourself having the argument with the partner or whoever, right? And at that moment, what you do is, because it's a 3-step process, so you view it from your angle and you take it your perspective. So you look at what was going through your mind, how you were feeling about things, what they did that made you do this or think that or feel this way, and how that impacted you afterwards, and like what things were you taking into that argument beforehand that played out in the resulting argument or issue or event, right? And so you kind of churn through that and you kind of come to accept and acknowledge everything that's going on in your side of the deal when it comes to this interaction. Then from that point, once you've kind of got a comprehensive understanding, acknowledgement of that, you then take the perspective of the character on screen. So this is where it comes through a little bit of like empathy training, like teaches you to be somewhat empathetic and understanding other people's like motivations, thoughts, and stuff like that. So you're still in the movie theater watching the screen, right? But this time, instead of thinking about you as the character, what you do is you take it from the perspective of the person you're having the issue with. So you think about what they were saying, what they were looking like, what they were thinking. You try to imagine, like, obviously, that's the whole point of empathy. You can't really know what they're thinking, but you have to like infer and kind of make guesses and, like semi-informed guesses about what you think they were thinking. And when you said this, how did they respond? And, like that old, like, kind of, I can't remember the statistics. God, what was it? Let's just say, like, 10% of communication is verbal. So, by being in that movie theater, you get to watch that other person's, facial expressions and reactions in your mental movie theater, and you can kind of having that little bit more distance instead of you being directly involved in the scene playing out on the screen. Because you're sitting in the movie theater, you can kind of have that little bit more detachment from the actual heat of the argument or the heat of the event, that you can actually kind of look at what they were saying, how they were responding, what were their facial expressions looking like, what were they probably taking in, like was there extra information that you knew about, maybe they had a lot going on at work, or their boss just yelled at them, or they're having trouble with something. You can kind of put all that information together and kind of get a better idea of their side of the whole scene and the story that played out on screen. And then once you've got to the point where you have, got a comprehensive understanding of that, or well, as comprehensive as you can get, and you've made full acceptance of it and acknowledged everything as well as you can, then the third angle that you take it from is you no longer take the perspective of you sitting within the movie theater. What you do is you take it from the perspective of the actual projector, the actual screen projector that's shooting the film onto the screen. So you take that perspective. So the reason why you want to go there is now you've detached yourself from looking at your own problems. You've now detached yourself from looking at the other person's problems and circumstances. Now you're looking at through a lens of an object that is impartial. It doesn't have feelings, thoughts, or emotions. It's just showing you what played out, and it doesn't, it's not it's not tainted by its own preconceptions. It's just a bit of machinery. So you imagine yourself as that projector, and it's shooting, the movie onto the screen, and you take that lens because it enables you, because when you're looking at it from your perspective at both what you did and what you said and what you were feeling, and when you take it from the perspective of what they said, what they did, and the way they responded, you're still doing that from your frame of reference to some degree, and it's still tainted by your like kind of preconceived notions about the lens through which you've experienced that thing, that event. It's still somewhat tainted. So by taking that avenue of going through an object instead, it kind of cuts that off a little bit. And if you're serious about it and you really do, go through with the whole, almost you could say silliness of this exercise and the kind of ludicrousness of it, if you actually stay committed to the part and actually do go through, you'll be able to get a more realistic and true understanding of what actually happened. And you can see instances where you may have taken things out of context, or you may have responded in the wrong way, and then you bark back at the other person, and then they get offended because they didn't intend for you to get offended or whatever, but then you did, and then you're attacking them, and they feel defensive, and then they kind of get aggressive as well because they feel under attack and under siege. So you kind of get, by taking that third person approach, or that object approach, you kind of get a more, you could almost say dehumanized, but dehumanized in the sense that you're not being, like I said, tainted by your own ideas of what happened. And I think this is an exercise that is really important because, one, it makes you more self-aware when it comes to these kind of instances. And what it can do is it can teach you that, oh, okay, normally when someone, in an argument or whatever, in an instance like this, when someone says something along these lines, I tend to react this way, and then usually the person, responds negatively. And from that information, it's not, you're not always going to be perfect when it comes to correcting that behavior or, adapting the right way, but it will give you that extra little bit of info and that little bit more of a nudge to go, oh, okay, I have a better understanding of actually what's going on in this scenario. And, that's obviously good because it makes you more self-aware, and that if you're more self-aware, you can respond to challenges and, negative interactions a lot easier, and, with a lot less stress yourself to deal with, because a lot of the issues that kind of relate to after people fight or something like that is it's more just playing through their head over and over and over the events that happened, but it's usually just solely from their own retelling and their own side and their own perspective. There's no real attempt to view it from other angles, either the other person's or a third person's kind of like a third object's perspective. So it helps you with that. And then the other part is it also helps you with empathy. So being able to better understand people's emotions and people's reactions, as you could imagine, greatly improves your ability to, communicate and, improve social relationships with the people and work with, because you just have a better, almost intrinsic understanding of how they function, how they operate, how they're going to respond. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like a flow chart where it's like, okay, I say this and then they respond X, Y, Z, and like it doesn't exactly follow to the letter every time, but you have more of a guideline as to where you think certain avenues or like certain things will branch out. Like certain things you say or do will branch out the interaction into either positive or negative kind of trajectories. So it gives you that better ability to read those situations and to respond accordingly. So have a thought, look through maybe something's happened recently with you where you could kind of apply this technique. Give it a go. I really do recommend it because every time I do it, I gain a lot more information and better understanding of what happened than me just thinking about it myself and just going, they said this to me and that hurt and they're mean. It gives me a lot more information. I go, oh no, okay, I see it from a better angle. They were struggling with their own stuff and I misinterpreted what they said there and I got aggressive or I didn't take it well and then they felt bad because they feel under attack, yada yada yada. And it's like, oh okay, I see what was going on there. It wasn't entirely, who would have thought, when it comes to a fight, it wasn't entirely the other person's fault. It wasn't just a story of good and evil. There was miscommunication, mistranslation, and all sorts of, knee-jerk reactions. So, yeah, like I said, give it a go. Have a think about it. If you don't have something that recently springs to mind, maybe go back in time a little bit. It may be a little bit more hazier, but give it a shot there. If not, if you can't think of anything you could possibly use as a, example to, run through this little technique, then I don't know how you've managed that because you've never had a negative interaction with other people in your life, and that is a curious kind of, situation you find yourself in, so I don't know why you're on this channel, but even then, take it as another tool in your tool belt that you can use in the future if something does come up. So, yeah, thanks so much. Give a like or subscribe or, do the thing.